I really struggled with this video. It was supposed to come out a month ago as an attempt to explore the rooftops around the New Palace Theatre and transition into the landscape of today's modern rooftops in Plymouth. And I wanted to try and describe this world, but I kept going down all these rabbit holes, mostly on the subject of something called placemaking, or if you like, our emotional relationship to geospatial design. And I found myself asking, why does Plymouth look and feel the way it does? And why did we not get the full version? Who inspired these ideas? So at this point, the rabbit hole was getting way too big, and to keep things simple, I decided to split into two videos. So this will be just a quick exploration of all those wacky futurists at the turn of the century and all those ideas they had that would filter down and influence this man who was responsible for rebuilding Plymouth. I just want to mention, like many Plymouthians, I was captivated at a young age by the many striking photos like this of the old city. And for those who don't know, this is what burnt down, and this is what we decided to knock down. So it's inevitable that when we look up at the flat roof lines of today's city skyline, there is a sense for some, perhaps regret, or at least a level of sadness and disconnection with today's city. I'm also going to carry the assumption that you've heard that Plymouth is ugly, something that I've heard from people all my life. Well, there is a concept called place identity, and it's part of a person's self-perception that forms through ongoing interaction with the physical spaces they inhabit. And maybe when people were telling me when I was younger that Plymouth was ugly, subconsciously I was probably taking it a bit too personal. And if today I was to show people around, I would do so enthusiastically, pointing out all the details that I've come to admire that make the city so amazing. Okay, so starting with the concept of the Garden City, a direct influence on Patrick Abercrombie. And the idea was created by Ebenezer Howard. He would design a zone city of concentric circles, incorporating town and countryside, often with areas dedicated to homeless people, alcohol abuse, and here, oddly enough, dedicated to jam production. So rezoning would be a key aspect of modern city theory. And although it would create many isolated urban voids today, it also meant that no one had to live any more downhill from the local abattoir. He himself would be inspired by a book called Looking Backwards, written by Edward Bellamy in 1888. Utopian futurist literature was hugely popular at the time, and with it came a wave of visionary concepts such as the cenotaph or Arturo Soria's linear city. And they are, of course, a reaction to the cramped, dirty, chaotic urban conditions of the 19th century. And whether it is Bellamy's Socialist City or William Morris's Craft Utopia, they all shared one thing in common: a belief that the individual could be elevated by the city itself. Streets would be clean, orderly, and the architecture then would represent a social whole, not just of progress, but identity. And it was also to start to represent a new kind of truth and morality, that architecture would not only be less self-identifying, it would be represented by function. The truth and beauty would be within the form of its simplicity, and its honesty would be represented in the structure and materials alone. There'll be no more storytelling and symbolism. There'll be no more wealth displayed in the facade or the roofline. There were many, like Le Corbusier, who would push everything to the extreme. This is his vision for Paris, and this here is his diagram of the modular man. And it means that a ceiling should be no higher than the average man's arm raised up high, typically a 6-foot policeman, I believe. There will be no more arbitrary scales for design. So he would derive these ideal measurements for the design of rooms, doors, furniture, and city plans, all scaled around a kind of mathematical harmony between the human body and the built world. He also said this, and important to note this, he said that we must kill the street. And what I interpret it to mean is that he wanted to kill culture, basically flatten the complexity of cities, erase the messiness that makes cities human. And if that wasn't bleak enough, there was this guy, Ludwig Karl Siemer, who imagined cities where life only happened in a vertical motion, home, work, shopping, all stacked above one another like like a human filing cabinet. If you want to move horizontally, you would have to use designated transport corridors. No wandering, no street life, just controlled motion in pre-approved directions. And then came World War II, and was one modernist stroke futurist said, "We will glorify the war, the world's only hygiene." So they had a lust to build these new cities on the footprints of our old ones. But not all pre-war ideologies were so bleak. The German expressionism in architecture would offer to inspire sort of grandiose curvature and conflicting geometry. Bruno Taut and Paul Sherbert imagined cities made of crystal and glass, so that the light and colours would shine through and uplift everyone's souls. Well, Plymouth, in essence, is a part of all those modernist functional ideas. But it lent a lot more towards the efficiency and organised utopia. A city zoned, flattened, and divided into neat functional compartments. We got the wide open spaces and boulevards, extensive ring road systems, the freedom of movement, space, and all the light that brings, and all those cool overhangs that keep you dry when it's raining. The theme among much of the post-war architecture design is framing and insets, often with vertical profiles between the windows. I actually love this. There is a lot of clarity and comfort, I think, in this style, and truly grateful that Patrick and co decided to go with this kind of tidy classic formalism, because it's actually left us with a really unique and beautiful city, but perhaps a very empty one, and even perhaps an unfinished one. The garden satellite system means that all the people were shipped into the countryside. And after 1,000 years of defending the city, it was no longer our home. It's just now a place of business. So Jane Jacobs, her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, she warned us that when you remove these small-scale human elements, not only do you kill the street, you will eventually kill the city. And she describes how modernist planning stripped neighborhoods of this vitality by removing what she would call eyes on the street, informal guardians who have a stake in the street because their lives are intertwined with it. And that's what Plymouth needs to do. It needs to break its mold and bring families back into its core. These micro-liminal places, more balconies. It needs a working interior. Take this Macchia concept from Kyoto, I think. Imagine narrows and passageways, the length of the entire shop front, a workshop, a living space, a green space, and a communal area. This would be a little bit like Morley Court down in Frankfurt Gate, but more of an emphasis on a creative working community. It's like giving the city back to original craft, rejecting this relentless, cheap attempts to make the city modern. Well, I don't think there's such a thing as modern anymore. There's only quality of how the building engages you. Or at least open up the rooftops like they do in Rotterdam. And what they do once a year, they've managed to build an extensive walkway of access points that cover the flat urban landscape above their city. And we could do the same. Up here, gardens, cinemas, art shows. Plymouth was, by all these ideologies, transformed the same way. It is an isolated city. It's like the lights are on and no one's home. And you've got to decide how the next 50 years, how the city is designed, how it's going to uplift you too. Because I absolutely know that people have to return to the city centre. And of course you have immense power. If you find that a corporation is plotting to turn your city into more isolation, then you just got to refuse to engage in these parasitical places, because they will be forced to build better. There is a shift right now in the UK, and here are some designs that I came across on the amazing Facebook page Architectural Uprising. Check it out. And they all basically explore traditional style homes and human scaled streets that blend the best of the past with thoughtful contemporary design. Plymouth's future is up again for grabs. Those modernists we talk about really did care about lifting people up into the future, and we paid for it out of pocket to attempt it. The difference is now the ones who have the power seems like their passion is wealth and not making beautiful places. I might be wrong, but the evidence says otherwise. So beware, else one day you also might end up living in Newton Abbot.